At first, we thought it was coincidence. Every morning around the same time, just after sunrise, a dark sedan would slowly pass our house. The car didn't speed through the neighborhood like most commuters. It crawled down the street, almost like the driver was studying every detail. The first few times we noticed it, we didn't think much about it. Neighborhood traffic was unusual. People left for work early, delivery trucks came and went, commoners and dog walkers crossed the street with their pets. But after about a week, the pattern became hard to ignore. The car always appeared at the same time. It always slowed down near our driveway. And every time it passed, the driver seemed to glance toward our house. One morning, I stepped outside while it rolled by. That's when I recognized the driver. Karen, the HOA president. She didn't wave or slow down to greet anyone like most neighbors did. Instead, she stared straight ahead, one hand on the wheel, the other holding a clipboard resting on the passenger seat. 2 days later, the first violation letter arrived. According to the notice, our trash bin had been visible from the street longer than the allowed time window. It came with a small fine and a warning about continued monitoring. Standing in the driveway with the letter in my hand, I looked back toward the street where Karen's car had passed earlier that morning. The timing felt too perfect to be accidental, and that was the moment we realized something uncomfortable. Karen wasn't just driving through the neighborhood, she was watching our house. At first, we tried to ignore it. Maybe Karen just drove through the neighborhood every morning to check on things. After all, she was the HOA president. Maybe that was part of how she managed the community. But the pattern kept repeating. Every morning at the same time, her car rolled slowly down our street. Sometimes she stopped for a moment near our driveway. Sometimes she simply drove past, but her eyes always seemed to drift toward our house. And almost every time that happened, a violation letter appeared a day or two later. The second notice claimed our lawn edging was uneven and inconsistent with community standards. I walked across the street and looked at 3 other houses with the same type of edging. None of them had received a letter. We fixed it anyway. A week later, another notice arrived. This time it was about our mailbox paint. According to Karen, the color had faded and no longer matched the aesthetic guidelines of the neighborhood. I checked the HOA handbook again. There was nothing about mailbox color. That's when we started paying closer attention. One morning, I stepped outside while Karen's car was creeping down the street. She slowed near our driveway, just like always. This time, she raised her phone and snapped a photo through the open window. She didn't even try to hide it. Later that afternoon, another email arrived from the HOA. Property inspection documentation. Karen wasn't just watching the neighborhood anymore. She was inspecting our house every morning. By the third month, Karen's morning drive-bys had become part of our routine. Every day, around the same time, the same dark sedan crept down the street. Some mornings she slowed near the mailbox. Other days she paused just long enough to take another photo before driving away. At first, we were the only ones paying attention. Then one evening while walking the dog, a neighbor asked a quiet question. Has Karen been watching your house too? That question changed everything. Apparently, we weren't the only ones noticing her patrols. 2 other homeowners on the street had received similar violation letters within the same month. One had been cited for a driveway stain that had been there for years. Another was fined because their garden planter supposedly disrupted the neighborhood's visual alignment. None of those rules existed in the HOA handbook. Soon, several of us started comparing letters. We laid them out on a kitchen table and began looking at the dates. The pattern was impossible to ignore. Every violation notice appeared shortly after Karen's car was seen slowing down in front of that house. Inspection, photo, letter, fine. The more residents compared their notices, the clearer it became. Karen wasn't just enforcing rules, she was building cases. By the time the next HOA meeting was announced, several homeowners had already printed copies of their violation letters and photos of their properties. Karen thought her morning inspections were keeping people quiet. What she didn't realize was that the neighborhood had started watching her back. The next HOA meeting felt different before it even started. Usually the room had only a few residents sitting quietly while Karen reviewed updates and closed the meeting quickly. But this time, nearly every chair was filled. Some homeowners stood along the walls, holding folders and printed violation notices. Karen walked in, carrying her usual binder and clipboard. At first, she didn't seem concerned. She started the meeting the same way she always did: maintenance updates, landscaping reminders, and a short comment about protecting neighborhood standards. But when she finished and opened the floor for questions, the mood in the room shifted immediately. One homeowner stood up and placed several violation letters on the table. Another resident followed with printed photos of houses on the street that had the same violations but had never received a notice. Then someone turned on a projector. A timeline appeared on the wall showing dates of Karen's morning drive-bys alongside the violation notices residents had received. The pattern was impossible to ignore. Every time Karen inspected a house during her morning patrols, a violation letter appeared shortly afterward. For a moment, the room went completely silent. One of the board members leaned forward and began reviewing the documents carefully. Another flipped through the official HOA handbook, checking the rules Karen had cited. Many of them weren't even written there. By the end of the meeting, the board voted to suspend Karen's enforcement authority while a full review of HOA practices was conducted. Karen didn't argue, because the neighborhood she had been watching every morning had finally started watching her too. Uh, Now we want to hear from you. Have you ever dealt with an HOA that seemed to target homeowners unfairly? Share your experience in the comments. And if you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share so more people learn how to stand up to unfair systems.